Alrighty, so here we have this function c of t is 5 sine 6t, comma 7 cosine 6t, and you're asked to compute the speed. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in here for a sec. So you're asked to compute the speed when t is pi over 4. And as you know from the reading, that when to compute the speed, you use the integrand for the arc length, because that's taking the derivative of the arc length, and so that's how we get the speed. So the integrand for the arc length looks like that square root with x prime squared plus y prime squared. And so you know we're going to need to figure out x prime and y prime, which you did. So x prime is going to be 6 times 5 cosine 6t. And y prime is going to be 6 times 7, I guess there's a negative here, sine of 6t. Okay, so these two functions are going to be replacing in the integrand, this is going to be what speed is, right? So just to reiterate, that is going to be the formula that we're going to be using. So when we plug it in, we get, and notice here I'm not actually multiplying 6 and 5 and 6 and 7, because things actually reduce really nicely. So I'm going to do, and how do I know that? I don't really necessarily know that it's going to reduce in the formula ahead of time, but sometimes when I don't simplify by multiplying things out like that, you can kind of see more algebra that can happen to make the math simpler, the result looking simpler. So x prime squared, take our x prime, write it there, and square everything. So we're going to get 6 squared, 5 squared, cosine squared 6t, right? This is x prime squaring that, okay? Then we're going to add y prime being squared. So you got to square everything here. So we're going to add 6 squared, 7 squared, sine squared of 6t. Be careful in this case, that minus sign, you're also squaring it, which is really -1 times all of it. And -1 squared is just 1. So that doesn't get like recorded here, but there is that's happening in the background. Also notice that when I'm saying square all the factors, you got this cosine of 6t is just one factor. So you're really only squaring the cosine piece. Here we have these 3 factors, and then I'm going to and then there's a third one. I'm only squaring the sine piece, because this is an argument and not a factor. It's an argument of the trig functions there. So next, we can see that here you can factor out 6 squared from both of these terms in the sum. And so we're going to factor out 6 squared. You end up with 5 squared cosine squared 6t plus 7 squared sine squared 6t. And now, the squaring is a power, so you can distribute into each of these factors here. And so you end up getting that the speed, let me scooch this up. So the speed is going to equal 6 times, and then you have this 5 squared times cosine squared 6t plus 7 squared sine squared 6t. Now we want to plug in t equals pi over 4. So when we do that into the these values here and here, notice you're taking pi over 4 and it's going to get multiplied by 6, okay? So really, you're going to be plugging in 6 pi over 4 into cosine and 6 pi over 4 into sine. And where are those located in terms of the angle? That's going to help you to do the math, like to do the calculation in your head. It's good to use the circles. So where is pi over 4 located? On this circle here, in this blue circle, pi over 4, let's draw our little lines here. So we have roughly our lines there. And pi over 4 is going to be here, roughly, right? So where is 6 pi over 4 going to be? Well, do 6 of these. So this is the first one. 1 pi over 4. That's where 2 pi over 4 is. 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4. 5 pi over 4. 6 pi over 4. So the angle, 6 pi over 4 is really 3 pi over 2. And that coordinate is going to be 0, -1. What does that mean? That means the cosine is 0 and the sine is -1. So when you're plugging it all in there, really what happens is a lot, like this whole bit right here goes away because that's 0, right? Like I said, from here, cosine is 0, cosine squared is 0. Here, sine is -1, so sine squared is +1, so the only thing that ends up surviving is 7 squared in this expression here. So like this ends up being just times 1. So that results in the speed at pi over 4 for this particle to be 6 times the square root of 7 squared, or in other words 7. And that gives you 42.